I graduated the academy, the Air Force Academy, in 1985. I did various operational and test assignments until I got out of the active component of the Air Force. And after 14 years, I was in 1999. I joined the Guard unit, the D.C. National Guard, and flew for the airlines for about a year and a half, Delta airline pilot. Then I went full-time with the Guard unit and held command at the squadron and group level, and am now at the Pentagon doing my first and only staff job, hopefully. So that morning was a morning like any other. It was a Tuesday. We had scheduled a planning meeting, which was something that we did on a regular basis for the following week. And the idea was to figure out what are our training objectives, what is maintenance going to be able to give us in terms of jets to fly, who needs to fly, so forth and so on. We had just gotten back from a deployment to Las Vegas, to Nellis Air Force Base, and so we were all pretty current and pretty proficient in flying. So normally in a Guard unit, when you come back from a deployment, things kind of slow down a little bit. That explains why we only had 3 jets airborne that day, because we couldn't get a fourth, and the planning meeting took precedence. Somebody came in and said that there had been an accident up in New York. It sounded like an airplane had hit a tower, and we all thought that was interesting. And, we're all kind of speculating as to what the cost could be, and then as soon as the second one hit, then we figured out that these were deliberate actions, and obviously we didn't know who it was or why they had done it, but we certainly did feel under attack at that point. So we stopped the meeting. Some of us went into the ready room, the break room, to see what was on TV and get some live shots of what was happening. And obviously, the memory of the 2 big towers there with smoke billowing out of them is something I'll never forget. And we were trying to figure out what was going to happen in the afternoon, calling back and forth to Tower to see if they needed any help, and that's when we started getting word that the Secret Service was concerned, and they wanted to get airplanes. They asked if we could get any airplanes up in the air as soon as possible, and that kind of was a turning point for us when we started acting with more urgency and decided that, we need to participate here. We started leaning towards getting jets ready and getting in the air as soon as possible. The FAA declares Skatana. It means that nobody's supposed to be airborne except for, essentially in practice, it means that nobody's supposed to be airborne except for the military people who are authorized to be there by the FAA. So that gave us freedom of movement, which we needed to be able to go find folks and get them to turn around and go someplace else other than Washington, D.C. One of the thoughts that went through my mind was the whole Pearl Harbor attack, where those 2 lieutenants that morning were 2 of the few who were able, or maybe 2 of the only, to get airborne and do something to the Japanese attackers. So that's what was going through my mind, which was, are there more behind them? And obviously everybody was thinking the same thing. Are there going to be more attacks? How am I going to be able to recognize them? And once we got in the air, we were able to talk a little bit more calmly about who was going to go where and who was going to look for what and what we were basically going to do. The enemy has a vote. All these adages you hear, no plan ever survives the first shot, things like that. And that's certainly the case in this modern time, when you've got the enemies and the technological capabilities and the will that they do in this day and age. When we got the call, can you get airplanes up in the air, there was no emotion at that point. It was all adrenaline. We didn't have time to worry about emotions and as far as the mental processes go, that emotions ranked very low. So adrenaline and training kicked in, and then we got up in the air. Another point I'll remember is getting the weapons-free rules of engagement call, which was unprecedented, a huge responsibility there, and that's when I got a little bit scared, not a whole lot scared, a little bit scared, because that essentially means that any pilot in the air has the authority to shoot down an airplane. So very quickly, you realize that if it's an airliner that we're talking about, an American Airlines, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, doesn't matter. If it's a large airliner, yeah, there are terrorists on board, but there's a good chance that there's a whole plane load of Americans in the back. So that was not a very happy place for any of us to be. The other significant memory that I have of that day was seeing the Pentagon on fire several thousand feet above. That hit me in the gut like a ton of bricks. And if anybody ever needs convincing that we were attacked on that day, that's all you need to see is the Department of Defense on fire and smoke billowing out of it. That's a very clear memory that's etched in my mind. And on the drive home that night, after the first sortie, we flew that second sortie where we escorted Air Force One in. That was a little bit of a longer sortie because by then we had AWACS and tankers airborne. And the drive home that night is when it really hit me as I'm sitting in my car trying to get back to the house that we're at war. We're going to be in this war for a long time. It was almost like the car was back on autopilot. I was still in disbelief. The adrenaline pump was starting to wear off, and I went home, kissed my wife, the kids, and tried to relax, but my mind was still racing, watched TV, trying to get more information on the who and the why part of the whole deal, which we hadn't had. We just knew what, obviously, all day long. And promptly fell asleep, went back to the unit, and did the same thing again. For about 3 months, we were putting airplanes up in the air for steady 24/7 combat air patrol over D.C. Air Force One is an outstanding, the Presidential Airlift Group, outstanding outfit, very professional people. Mark Tillman was the skipper over there at the time, and that was that was our first meeting. Our first meeting was in the air that afternoon, where they were trying to get back into D.C. after bouncing around the country, and that story has been well told. The Air Force felt strongly about providing some kind of cover as Air Force One and the President came back in, and that's what we did. Lucky and myself and two F-16s from Langley went out west to pick the boss up, as it were, and bring him and the team in safely. So, to my knowledge, that doesn't happen very often, if ever. Air Force One safely landed at Andrews, and we went back into the cap overhead. That's when we all breathed a big sigh of relief. The bottom line is, you're always wondering in the back of your mind, does somebody know something that I don't? Are they asking me to do this because they have another piece of intelligence about somebody on the ground who's made a threat, who's got a capability that we have no idea about? And that's the reality of our business, and sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that isn't. Sometimes they do have the ability to let everybody in and get everybody on the same page. But reality is that's not always the case. So, boss is on the ground, everybody breathes a big sigh of relief, and then you start to thinking, wow, did we really just do that? Is that what really just happened? If I had been ordered to shoot down an airliner, or worse, if I had had to make the decision to shoot down an airliner, and I think I can say this for the rest of my squadron mates or anybody in the same situation, that we would have done the right thing at the time. We would have had a significant problem doing it, and we would have done it knowing that there would have been huge cost and pain, but it would have needed to be done, and we would have done it. And especially if we're talking about dropping an airliner or shooting down an airliner over a largely populated area, now you're not only talking about the passengers on board, but you're also talking about not having any idea what's going to happen once that debris hits the ground and how many people it's going to kill there. So Would we have done it? Yes. Would we have liked it? Absolutely not, and we would have had big problems with it. You got to remember all of our air defense efforts were targeted against military airplanes. And so that's what we trained against, and that's what we studied. We had never really trained on how to shoot down an airliner. And so that's a completely different set of problems, how you take down an airliner and why you want to take one down. Even if you do shoot parts of it, there's a big chance that it's going to continue to fly, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed with redundancies to continue to fly. So even if you do hit it, are they going to be able to control it and use it as a guided missile, essentially, and for how long? Those are the types of tactical questions that we were asking ourselves on that day. How are we actually going to do this if we have to do that?